A cryptic letter lures the legendary Hercule Poirot to Ravenwood Manor, a Gothic estate shrouded in fog and secrets. Who is the mysterious M behind this invitation, and why have they summoned a retired colonel, a nosy journalist, a reclusive heiress, and a slick gambler to play a dangerous game? A priceless sapphire is at stake, and a master criminal hides among the guests, plotting a theft only Poirot's brilliant mind can stop. As riddles unfold in a treacherous maze, masked dancers with deception at a midnight ball, and hidden passages reveal deadly traps, one question burns: can Poirot unmask the true mastermind before the final curtain falls? Dive into a whirlwind of suspense, where every clue is a challenge, every guest a suspect, and the truth is a puzzle only Poirot can solve. Chapter 1. The enigmatic invitation. The rain pattered against the tall windows of Hercule Poirot's London flat, a gentle percussion that mingled with the crackle of the fireplace. The detective sat in his favourite armchair, a delicate porcelain, a cup of tisane balanced in his hands, its steam curling like a question mark in the air. The hour was late, and the city outside was cloaked in a November fog, thick and secretive. Poirot's meticulous routine polishing his patent leather shoes, arranging his moustache wax, and savouring his evening drink had been interrupted by the arrival of an unexpected letter. It had slipped through the letterbox with a whisper, sealed with crimson wax and bearing no return address. The envelope was heavy, made of fine vellum, and addressed in an elegant looping script, Monsieur Hercule Poirot-esque. Inside was a single sheet, its words penned with such flourish they seemed to dance across the page. Monsieur Poirot, your reputation as a mind unparalleled precedes you. I invite you to Ravenwood Manor, a place of secrets and shadows, for a weekend of intellectual games. A challenge awaits one that will test the very limits of your little grey cells. Arrive Friday at dusk. Discretion is paramount. M. Poirot. Green eyes gleamed as he read the letter again, his lips twitching into a faint smile. A challenge. He was no stranger to puzzles, but this one carried an air of theatricality that piqued his curiosity. Who was this M, and why the cloak and dagger flourish? The lack of detail was deliberate, a lure cast to hook his intellect. He set the letter on his mahogany desk, beside a neatly arranged stack of case files, and murmured, Mon Dieu. A game of minds. Very well, Monsieur or Madame M. Poirot accepts. By Friday, Poirot found himself in a chauffeured car winding through the misty hills of the English countryside. The vehicle, a sleek Rolls-Royce sent by his mysterious host, glided over narrow roads flanked by skeletal trees. The driver, a taciturn man with a scar above his left eyebrow, offered no conversation, only a curt nod when Poirot attempted pleasantries. In his accented English, the detective adjusted his Homburg hat and smoothed his overcoat, his mind already dissecting the sparse clues: the luxurious car, the secretive driver, the isolated destination. Ravenwood Manor, he had learned from discreet inquiries, was a Gothic pile owned by an eccentric recluse who rarely entertained. The plot, as they say, was thickening. The manor loomed into view as the car crested a hill, its spires piercing the fog like the teeth of some ancient beast. Ivy clung to its stone facade, and gargoyles leered from the eaves, their eyes hollow in the twilight. The car halted before a grand oak door, and the driver gestured for Poirot to enter. As he stepped into the cavernous hall, gaunt and with an unsettlingly fixed smile greeted him. Monsieur Poirot, welcome. The other guests are in the drawing room. Your host will join you shortly. The drawing room was a study in opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms across velvet drapes, and a roaring fire illuminated portraits of stern-faced ancestors. 4 figures turned as Poirot entered, their expressions a mix of curiosity and wariness. The butler introduced them with a practiced bow. First was Colonel Reginald Hargreaves, a barrel-chested man with a bristling moustache and a limp that suggested an old war wound. His handshake was firm, but his eyes darted nervously as if scanning for unseen threats. "Heard of you, Poirot," he grunted. "Hope you're as clever as they say. This place gives me the creeps." Next was Miss Clara Wren, a journalist with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes, her auburn hair pinned in a style that was both modern and defiant. She clutched a notebook, her fingers stained with ink. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice crisp, "I trust you'll give me something worth writing about. This invitation reeks of a story." Poirot noted her probing gaze, as if she were already composing headlines. Then came Lady Evelyn St. Clair, a reclusive heiress draped in a fur stole, her pale hands adorned with rings that caught the firelight. Her voice was soft, almost tremulous, but her eyes held a quiet intensity. "I rarely leave my estate," she murmured, "but this invitation, it was most persuasive. I hope it's not a mistake." Poirot sensed a guardedness in her, a woman accustomed to secrets. Finally, there was Victor Lyle, a gambler with a disarming grin and hands that moved with the fluidity of a magician. His suit was impeccably tailored, but a faint scar on his cheek hinted at a less polished past. "Monsieur Poirot, a pleasure," he said, his tone light but his eyes calculating. "I'm betting this weekend will be unforgettable." Poirot bowed to each, his moustache twitching with amusement. "Mies Amos, it is an honor to be among such varied company. I am Hercule Poirot, and I trust we shall unravel this mystery together, Nan." His words were polite, but his gaze lingered on each face, cataloguing quirks and tells. The Colonel's twitch, Clara's restless fingers, Lady Evelyn's clasped hands, Victor's too easy smile. The butler reappeared, bearing a silver tray with crystal flutes of champagne. As the guests sipped, the room filled with stilted conversation, Colonel Hargreaves reminiscing about his campaigns, Clara probing for details about the manor, Lady Evelyn deflecting with vague pleasantries, and Victor spinning tales of Monty Carlo. Poirot listened, his silence a sponge absorbing every word, every pause. Dinner was announced, and the group moved to a dining room dominated by a long mahogany table. Candlelight flickered over silverware and bone china, casting shadows that danced like spectres. The meal was exquisite roast pheasant, truffled potatoes, a Bordeaux that sang on the tongue, but the absence of their host hung over the table like a storm cloud. The butler, serving with mechanical precision, offered no answers when questioned. "The master will reveal themselves in time," he said, his smile never wavering, as dessert a delicate creme brulee was served. A low hum filled the room, like the buzz of a distant machine. The guests froze, glasses halfway to lips. From a concealed panel in the wall, a phonograph crackled to life, its needle scratching out a voice that was smooth, cultured, and unmistakably commanding. "Welcome, esteemed guests, to Ravenwood Manor. I am your host, known to you only as M. You have been chosen for a game of wits, a test of cunning. Among you is a master criminal, one whose mind rivals even that of Monsieur Poirot. Their plan is to execute a theft of unparalleled audacity before this weekend ends. Monsieur Poirot, your task is to unmask this villain before they succeed. Fail, and the consequences will be severe. The game begins now." The phonograph clicked off, leaving a silence so thick it seemed to choke the air. Colonel Hargreaves slammed his fist on the table, rattling the silverware. What the devil is this nonsense? A criminal among us? Preposterous. Clara's eyes gleamed with excitement. This is no ordinary weekend. It's a story of scandal. Who's the crook? Poirot got a hunch yet. Lady Evelyn clutched her napkin, her knuckles white. This is madness. Why would I stay in a house with a criminal? Victor leaned back, swirling his wine. Sounds like fun to me. A high-stakes game, eh? Wonder what the prize is. Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. Amos, let us not be hasty. The voice speaks of a criminal, but also of a game. Hercule Poirot does not panic. He observes, he thinks, and he will uncover the truth. He sipped his tisane, brought specially by the butler at his request, and let his gaze sweep the room. The phonograph's panel was seamless, invisible now, but its message had shifted the atmosphere. Suspicion crackled like static. The butler reappeared, offering to show the guests to their rooms. As they rose, Poirot lingered, his fingers brushing the edge of the tablecloth. He noticed a faint indentation in the wood, barely visibly marked, shaped like a crescent moon. It was no accident, he thought, but a clue, perhaps left by design. He filed it away in his mind, a piece of the puzzle yet to fit in his room. A sumptuous chamber with a four-poster bed and heavy brocade curtains. Poirot unpacked his small valise. He arranged his toiletries with precision, his moustache comb placed just so, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The letter, the manner, the guests. The voice each was a thread in a tapestry he had yet to weave. The Colonel's unease suggested a man haunted by his past. Clara's curiosity bordered on obsession, as if she sought more than a story. Lady Evelyn's fragility felt rehearsed, a mask for something deeper. And Victor, his charm was a sleight of hand, distracting from sharper edges. As Poirot prepared for bed, slipping into silk pajamas and adjusting his nightcap, he stood at the window, gazing into the fog. The manor's grounds stretched into darkness, the silhouettes of trees like sentinels guarding secrets. The crescent mark nagged at him, a detail that refused to settle. Was it a signature of M, a signal from the criminal, or merely a flaw in the wood? He climbed into bed, the fire in his room casting a warm glow. The game had begun, and Poirot felt the familiar thrill of the chase. Mon cher M, he murmured, you have set the stage, but it is Hercule Poirot who will write the ending. He closed his eyes, his little grey cells humming, already piecing together the enigma of Ravenwood Manor. Tomorrow, he knew, the real work would begin. Chapter 2. The puzzle of the locked room. The morning sun struggled through the fog, casting a pallid glow over Ravenwood Manor. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit with a lavender tie, descended the grand staircase, his polished shoes tapping a deliberate rhythm on the oak steps. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood and wax, and a faint chill lingered despite the fires stoked by unseen servants. Last night's phonograph message had set the guests on edge, and Poirot's mind buzzed with possibilities. The crescent mark on the dining table, the cryptic M, the varied temperaments of his fellow guests, was a fragment of a larger design, and he was determined to see it whole. In the dining room, breakfast was laid out, silver urns of coffee, racks of toast, and platters of kedgeree and kippers. The guests were already seated, their faces a gallery of unease. Colonel Hargreaves stabbed at his eggs with unnecessary force, his fork scraping the plate. Clara Wren scribbled in her notebook, her eyes darting between bites. Lady Evelyn sent. Claire sipped tea, her hands steady but her gaze distant. Victor Lyle, lounging with a cigarette, flashed a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Poirot noted the tension, thick as the fog outside, and took his seat with a polite nod. "Bonjour, mes amis," he said, pouring himself a cup of coffee with meticulous care. "I trust you slept well, despite our intriguing welcome last night." "Hardly," muttered the colonel, his moustache bristling. "Damned eerie, that voice. And this talk of a criminal makes a man wonder who he's breaking bread with." Clara's pen paused. "It's a brilliant setup, isn't it? A master criminal among us, and Poirot to play cat-and-mouse. I'd wager it's you, Colonel, with that soldierly nerve. Ever planned a heist in your army days?" Hargreaves reddened. "Watch your tongue, miss. I fought for king and country, not to pilfer jewels." Lady Evelyn set down her cup, the porcelain clinking softly. "This is no game for me. I came for a quiet retreat, not to be accused of thievery." Victor exhaled a plume of smoke, his voice lazy but sharp. "Oh, come, now. We're all suspects, aren't we? Makes it exciting. What's the prize, Poirot? Got a guess?" Poirot smiled, dabbing his lips with a napkin. "The prize, Monsieur Lyle, is the truth, and Hercule Poirot always finds it." His tone was light, but his eyes scanned each face, noting the colonel's clenched jaw, Clara's suppressed smirk, Evelyn's fleeting glance toward the door, and Victor's fingers drumming a silent rhythm. The butler, as silent as a shadow, appeared to announce the day's activity. "The master requests your presence in the library," he intoned, his fixed smile unnerving. The group followed, Poirot trailing to observe their gaits, the colonel's limp more pronounced under stress, Clara's brisk stride, Evelyn's hesitant steps, Victor's easy swagger. The library was a cathedral of books, its shelves soaring to a vaulted ceiling adorned with frescoes of mythical beasts. A massive oak table dominated the room, and at its center stood a glass case, within which gleamed a sapphire the size of a quail's egg. Its facets caught the light, throwing blue sparks across the walls. The guests gasped, but Poirot's attention was elsewhere, on a brass phonograph in the corner, identical to the one in the dining room. The butler pressed a switch, and the same smooth voice crackled to life. "Good morning, my guests. Behold the Star of Ravenwood, a gem of incalculable worth. One among you plans to steal it by midnight tonight. To prevent this, each of you will receive a key to this case, which is secured by 5 unique locks. Guard your key well, for it is your trust and your suspicion that is on trial. Monsieur Poirot, the game is in your hands. 5 keys, each, distinct in shape and metal, were distributed by the butler. Poirot examined his slender silver key with a clover-shaped bow, turning it in his fingers. The colonel's was iron, Clara's bronze, Evelyn's gold, Victor's copper, each. Guest pocketed their key, their expressions a mix of intrigue and distrust. 5 keys, 5 locks, Poirot mused aloud. A puzzle most elegant. But why give us access to the prize, Nan? It is a test, perhaps, of character or of cunning. Clara smirked, twirling her key. Or a trap. Whoever tries to open the case is the thief, right? I'm keeping mine close. Bloody. Nonsense, Hargreaves growled. I'll lock mine in my room. No one's pinning this on me. Evelyn clutched her key to her chest. I don't like this. It feels wrong. Victor spun his key like a coin. Relax, my lady. It's just a game, unless you've got sticky fingers. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the bickering. Mies, Amos, let us explore this manor. The criminal will not reveal themselves at breakfast. We must observe, deduce, and act. The butler led them on a tour, through corridors lined with tapestries and suits of armor, past windows overlooking a labyrinthine garden. Poirot's eyes were everywhere. A scuff on a baseboard, a curtain slightly askew, a faint whiff of cigar smoke where none should be. At the study, a heavy door of black walnut stood ajar, revealing a room of leather-bound ledgers and a marble fireplace. Poirot lingered, noting a portrait of a stern woman with a crescent pendant, another echo of the dining table's mark. As the group moved on, Lady Evelyn swayed, her hand grasping a banister. I feel faint," she whispered, sinking to a velvet bench. The others rushed to her, Clara fanning her with her notebook, Victor offering a flask from his pocket. Poirot, however, slipped into the study, his movements swift and silent. The room was orderly, but a bookcase caught his eye. One shelf, slightly misaligned. He pressed it, and a panel clicked open, revealing a narrow compartment. Inside was nothing but dust, yet the hinges were oiled, recently used. "Interessant," Poirot murmured, closing the panel. The criminal, he suspected, was probing the manor's secrets, testing its defenses. But for what purpose? The sapphire was in the library, not here. He rejoined the group as Evelyn recovered, her color returning. "Thank you," she said weakly. "It's the air in this place, so oppressive." "Get some rest, my dear," the colonel said gruffly. "This game's not worth your health." Clara's eyes narrowed. "Convenient timing, that feint. You didn't touch your key while we were distracted, did you?" Evelyn's lips tightened. "How dare you?" "Enough," Poirot interjected, his voice sharp. "We are not children squabbling over toys. The criminal watches us, and division is their ally. Let us return to the library." Back at the glass case, Poirot examined the locks, each a different mechanism: pin, tumbler, warded, lever. The sapphire gleamed, a taunt to the unwary. He tested his key, finding it fit the clover-shaped lock perfectly, but he did not turn it. Instead, he watched the others, Hargreaves' fingers twitching, Clara's quick glance at the phonograph, Evelyn's reluctance to approach, Victor's casual inspection of the case's base. As the group dispersed to their rooms, Poirot lingered, sketching the case's design in his mind. The panel in the study, the crescent mark, the keys each, was a piece of a machine, and he was beginning to see its gears. The criminal was not merely after the sapphire. They were playing a deeper game, one that tested Poirot's ability to anticipate their moves. He retired to his room, pausing at the window. The fog had thickened, obscuring the gardens, but a faint light flickered near the maze's edge. A lantern, perhaps, or a signal. Poirot's moustache twitched. "Mon cher criminal," he whispered, "you move in shadows, but Hercule Poirot sees all." He drew the curtains, satisfied that his first countermove discovering the panel had kept him ahead. The day was done, but the game was far from over. Chapter 3. Shadows in the Maze. The second morning at Ravenwood Manor dawned with a sky bruised by storm clouds, the air sharp with the promise of rain. Hercule Poirot stood at his window, his morning tisane cooling in its cup, as he studied the sprawling hedge maze that dominated the manor's gardens. Its twisting paths, barely visible through the thinning fog, seemed to beckon like the labyrinth of a cunning mind. The events of yesterday, the phonograph's chilling message, the sapphire's locked case, The hidden panel in the study had set the stage for a deeper mystery. Poirot's little grey cells were alight, piecing together the threads of this intricate game. He descended to the breakfast room, where the guests were already gathered, their faces etched with the strain of suspicion. Colonel Hargreaves sat rigid, his coffee untouched, his fingers tapping an uneven rhythm on the tablecloth. Clara Wren, her notebook open, sketched something of floor plan, perhaps while stealing glances at the others. Lady Evelyn St. Clair, pale but composed, buttered a scone with deliberate care, as if anchoring herself to routine. Victor Lyle, lighting a fresh cigarette, leaned back with a grin that seemed to mock the tension. Poirot noted a new detail: a faint smudge of green ink on Clara's cuff, and a slight tremor in Evelyn's left hand. "Bonjour," Poirot greeted, taking his seat. "The air is heavy today, Nan, but the mind must remain clear, clear." Hargreaves snorted, his voice rough. "This place is a madhouse. Keys, locked cases, invisible hosts. I'm half a mind to leave." Clara's pen scratched faster, and missed the scoop of the year. "Not me, Poirot. Any theories on our phantom criminal yet?" Evelyn's scone crumbled slightly in her grip. "I wish you'd stop treating this like a parlour game, Miss Wren. It's unsettling." Victor exhaled a lazy ring of smoke. "Lighten up, all of you. It's a puzzle, and our Belgian friend here loves puzzles." "Right, Poirot." Poirot smiled, pouring his coffee with precision. "Monsieur Lyle, a puzzle is only as good as its solver, and Hercule Poirot is a very good solver." His tone was light, but his eyes lingered on Victor's cigarette case, engraved with a serpentine design that echoed the crescent mark from the dining table. The butler appeared, his gaunt face as unreadable as ever, and announced the day's challenge. "The master invites you to the garden maze, where a riddle awaits. Solve it, and you may uncover a secret that protects the star of Ravenwood. Fail, and the thief gains the advantage." He handed each guest a map of the maze, its paths drawn in crisp black ink, and gestured toward the French doors leading outside. The group stepped into the garden, the air damp and cool. The maze loomed ahead, its yew hedges towering, their leaves glistening with dew. Poirot studied the map, noting its intricate design: dead ends, loops, and a central clearing marked with a fountain. The butler paired the guests for the challenge: Poirot with Clara, Hargreaves with Victor, and Evelyn alone, as she insisted she could manage. "I prefer solitude," she said softly, clutching her map. As Poirot and Clara entered the maze, the hedges seemed to close around them, muffling the world outside. Clara's boots crunched on the gravel path, her voice brisk. "So, Poirot, what's your method? You're famous for it. Do you read faces or follow clues?" Poirot adjusted his hat, his steps measured. "Mademoiselle, I observe every face, the voice, the hands, the lies that hide in truth. Tell me, why do you write so furiously in that notebook?" She laughed, a sharp sound. "A journalist never stops working. I'm mapping this place, noting who does what. You're not the only one watching, Raymond. And what have you seen?" He glanced at her cuff, the green ink more vivid in the daylight. She hesitated, then shrugged. "The Colonel's jumpy, like he's hiding something. Evelyn's too. Delicate it's an act, I'd bet. Victor's too smooth, like a card sharp, and you're unreadable." Poirot's moustache twitched. "A compliment, Nan, but the maze, it speaks louder than words." He paused at a fork, studying the map. A faint pencil mark, not his own, circled the fountain. Someone had tampered with his map, Clara, perhaps during breakfast. Elsewhere in the maze, raised voices echoed. Hargreaves and Victor were arguing, their words indistinct but heated. Poirot, lead Clara onward, navigating turns with the precision of a chess master. The hedges whispered as the wind stirred, and he caught a glimpse of Evelyn's fur stole flashing through a gap, moving swiftly for someone so frail. At the maze's heart. They found the fountain, a marble basin carved with ivy and crowned by a stone raven, its beak holding a scroll. The other guests arrived moments later, Hargreaves red-faced, Victor smirking, Evelyn breathless but composed. The scroll bore a riddle in elegant script. Beneath the raven's watchful eye, a path lies hidden from the sky. Seek the stone that shifts at dusk, where secrets sleep in earth's own husk. Poirot read it aloud, his voice steady. A secret path, Mies Amos. The criminal seeks it, and we must find it first. Hargreaves scoffed. More riddles. This is a fool's errand. It's a clue to the sapphire, Clara said, her eyes alight. A hidden passage, maybe to the library. Evelyn shivered, pulling her stole tighter. I don't like this. It feels like we're being watched. Victor knelt by the fountain, tracing its base. Clever setup. Bet there's a mechanism here. Seen traps like this in Cairo. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Monsieur Lyle, you have experience with traps. Victor only grinned, saying nothing, working. Together, the group examined the fountain. Poirot's fingers brushed a loose stone, its edge worn smooth. He pressed it, and a soft click echoed. A slab in the fountain's base slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel descending into darkness. A map, etched on parchment, lay within, showing a passage linking the maze to the manor's undercroft. Magnifique, Poirot murmured, but his triumph was cut short. A thin wire gleamed across the tunnel's entrance, a tripwire, taut and deadly. He knelt, examining it with care. A trap, Mies Amos. The criminal does not wish us to follow. Hargreaves swore under his breath. Blasted booby traps. This is no game, it's sabotage. Clara scribbled furiously. This'll make headlines. Who rigged it, Poirot? Evelyn stepped back, her voice trembling. We shouldn't go down there. It's too dangerous. Victor's grin widened. Scared, my lady? Or protecting something? Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. With delicate precision, he used a pocket knife to sever the wire, rendering the trap harmless. He pocketed the map, his mind racing. The tunnel led to the manor, likely near the library, but why the trap? Was it to deter pursuit or to mark the criminal's path? As the group retraced their steps through the maze, Poirot lagged behind, his eyes on Evelyn. She had vanished briefly during the tour, claiming to be lost, but her swift pace in the maze suggested otherwise. Had she set the trap? Or was it Victor, with his talk of Cairo traps? Clara's ink-stained cuff hinted at her own investigations, and Hargreaves' agitation could mask guilt. Emerging from the maze, the group stood in the garden, the manor looming like a silent judge. Poirot held up the map, his voice calm but firm. We have found a piece of the puzzle, but the criminal is bold, and we must be bolder. Tonight, we watch, we listen, we think. The guests nodded, their faces a mix of awe and unease. Clara whispered to Victor, her words too low to catch. Hargreaves limped toward the manor, muttering about traps. Evelyn lingered by the mazes. Entrance, her eyes on the fountain. Poirot adjusted his tie, satisfied with the day's progress. The tunnel was a lead, the trap a warning, and the map a key. The criminal had made their first mistake, and Hercule Poirot was closing in. Chapter 4. The midnight masquerade, the evening air at Ravenwood Manor, thrummed with a restless energy, as if the ancient stones themselves anticipated the next move in the enigmatic game set by their unseen host. Hercule Poirot stood before a gilded mirror in his room, adjusting the velvet mask of a Venetian noble, its gold filigree glinting in the candlelight. His black tailcoat was pressed to perfection, his bow tie a flawless knot, but his mind churned over the day's discoveries. The tunnel map from the maze, the disarmed tripwire, and the Star of Ravenwood, still secure in its 5-locked case in the library. The phonograph's voice haunted him a theft by midnight, unless he named the criminal. Tonight's masquerade ball, announced by the butler at lunch, was no mere festivity. It was a stage for deception, and Poirot was ready to take his part, descending the grand staircase. He entered the ballroom, a vast chamber where chandeliers dripped crystal like frozen tears, casting prisms across the polished marble floor. Masked figures swirled to the lilting strains of a string quartet. Harlequins, queens, knights, each guest cloaked in silk and secrecy, as per the host's cryptic instructions. Poirot's green eyes, short behind his mask, sought the telltale signs that betrayed identity, a limp, a gesture, a glint of jewelry. He spotted Colonel Hargreaves first, his military bearing unmistakable, despite a black domino mask and a cavalier's cape. The colonel stood by a punch bowl, his posture rigid, his hand repeatedly checking a pocket lightly guarding his iron key to the sapphire's case. Clara Wren, in a peacock blue gown with a mask adorned with quills, wove through the crowd, her movements purposeful, as if chasing a headline. Lady Evelyn St. Clair, draped in silver silk with a swan mask, glided near the quartet, her steps hesitant yet elegant, her gold key lightly hidden in her reticule. Victor Lyle, dressed as a jester with softly jingling bells, leaned against a pillar, his copper key nowhere in sight, his masked eyes scanning with a predator's calm. Poirot sipped champagne, its bubbles sharp against his tongue, and circulated, his ears catching fragments of conversation, whispers of bets, fears, and veiled accusations. The butler had distributed costumes earlier, each tailored to its wearer, a detail that piqued Poirot's curiosity. Was the precision meant to obscure identities or to reveal them through their choices? He approached Clara first, offering a slight bow. "Mademoiselle, a dance." His tone was courteous, but his intent was to probe. She accepted, her gloved hand cool in his. As they waltzed, her quill mask tilted, catching the chandelier's glow. "Enjoying the game, Poirot?" she asked, her voice laced with mischief. "Or too busy suspecting us all?" "Mademoiselle, a game is only as good as its players," he replied, his steps precise. "And you play with such enthusiasm. Tell me, what secrets does your notebook hold tonight?" She laughed, sharp and quick. "Just observations. The Colonel's jumpy, Evelyn's too fragile, Victor's too slick. You're the wild card, Poirot. What's your read?" He smiled, guiding her through a turn. "I read the silences, mademoiselle, the pause before the answer, the glance that lingers. And your ink-stained cuff suggests more than idle notes." Her eyes flickered behind her mask. "You don't miss much, do you? But I'm just here for the story, Vraiment. Then why mark my maze map with your pencil?" He kept his tone light, but her slight stiffening told him he'd struck a nerve as the dance ended. Poirot caught a glimpse of Victor passing a folded note to Clara, who tucked it into her sleeve with practiced speed. He filed the exchange away. Moving toward Lady Evelyn next, she stood alone, her silver gown shimmering like moonlight. "Madame, may I have this waltz?" he asked, offering his hand. She hesitated, then accepted, her touch feather-light. "This place unsettles me, monsieur." "Poirot," she murmured as they moved. "All these masks. It's as if we're all hiding something." But the mask reveals as much as it conceals," he said, noting the faint tremor in her hand. "Your swan is fitting graceful, yet solitary. Why accept this invitation, madame?" Her lips parted, then closed. "Curiosity," she said, at last, "and perhaps a need to escape my own walls." The music swelled, and Poirot guided her expertly, his mind cataloguing her guarded words. As they passed a shadowed alcove, he saw Hargreaves arguing with Victor, their voices low but heated. The colonel's cape flared as he gestured. Victor's jester bells jingled mockingly. Poirot steered Evelyn closer, catching only fragments. "Not your pawn," from Hargreaves, and Victor's cool, "Know your place." As the clock neared 11, the butler appeared, his gaunt face ghostly in the candlelight. "The master speaks," he announced, gesturing to a phonograph concealed behind a tapestry. The smooth voice filled the room. "Esteemed guests, the hour grows late. By midnight, the star of Ravenwood will vanish unless Monsieur Poirot names the thief. Dance, observe, but choose wisely. Trust is a fragile thing." The music resumed, but the air tightened. Guests whispered, their masks hiding fear or calculation. Poirot declined another dance, retreating to a balcony overlooking the maze. The fog had lifted, revealing its dark hedges under a crescent moon, shape that echoed the dining table's mark and the study's portrait pendant. A pattern, he thought, but not yet complete. He re-entered the ballroom, his eyes catching Clara slipping the note from her sleeve to read it discreetly. Poirot approached Victor, who was now charming a group with a tale of a Monte Carlo bluff. "Monsieur Lyle," Poirot interjected, "a word. I saw you pass a note to Mademoiselle Wren. A jest, or something more?" Victor's grin didn't falter. "Just a wager, Poirot. Care to join?" "I bet the sapphire stays put." "Nan, I do not gamble with truth," Poirot said, his gaze steady. Victor laughed, but his hand brushed his pocket, where the copper key likely rested, as midnight loomed. Poirot gathered the guests in the ballroom's center, the quartet falling silent. "Mies Amos," he began, his voice cutting through the tension. "The hour approaches, and the criminal grows bold. I have seen a note past a plan to distract me during this masquerade." He produced a folded paper, retrieved from Clara's sleeve during their dance, his sleight of hand unnoticed. Opening it, he read aloud, "Keep Poirot dancing, 11:45. Library clear." Gasps rippled through the group. Clara flushed, her quills trembling. "That's not mine. I was just holding it." Hargreaves swore, "This is madness. Who wrote it?" Evelyn stepped back, her swan mask slipping slightly. "This is outrageous." "I've done nothing," Victor clapped, his bells jingling. "Bravo, Poirot, but a note proves nothing." Poirot raised a hand. "It proves intent. The sapphire is safe for now. But the criminal tests us, and I am not so easily distracted." He met each masked gaze, seeing defiance, fear, and calculation. "Return to your rooms, Mies Amis. The night is done, but the game continues." The guests dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the vast hall. Poirot lingered, checking the library. The writ was locked, the sapphire secure. He climbed the stairs to his room, the note in his pocket, his mind alight. The distraction had failed, the criminals moved thwarted. He sat by his fire, sipping tisane, and smiled. "Mon cher thief," he murmured, "you dance well, but Hercule Poirot leads this waltz." The night ended with the sapphire safe, but the morning would bring new shadows to chase. Chapter 5. The Vanishing Act. The final morning at Ravenwood Manor broke with a sky heavy and grey, the air thick with the scent of impending rain. Hercule Poirot awoke early, his mind a whirl of deductions from the previous night's masquerade. The note passed between Victor Lyle and Clara Wren, the thwarted distraction. The sapphire still secure in its 5-locked case. Yet the game was far from over. The phonograph's warning loomed midnight had passed, but the criminal's audacity suggested they would not relent. Poirot, dressed in a navy suit, his tie-pin gleaming like a tiny sentinel, and descended to the library, determined to check the Star of Ravenwood before breakfast. The library was silent, its shelves brooding under the weight of ancient tomes. The glass case stood untouched, the sapphire's blue facets catching the dim morning light. Poirot examined the Lox's silver clover key, the Colonel's iron, Clara's bronze, Evelyn's gold, Victor's copper, all intact. But as he turned the clover key experimentally, a faint click sounded, and the case sprang open. The sapphire was gone. A lesser man might have gasped, but Poirot's moustache merely twitched. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, closing the case with care. "The thief has played their hand at last." His eyes swept the room, noting a faint scuff on the windowsill, a mark too precise to be accidental. The criminal had struck, and Poirot was one step behind. At breakfast, the mood was electric with unease. Colonel Hargreaves slammed his teacup down, his face florid. "This is a farce. I guarded my key all night, locked it in my trunk. If that gem's gone, it's not on me." Clara's pen flew across her notebook, her eyes gleaming with barely concealed excitement. "Gone? Oh, this is gold." Poirot howled. "They do it. Pick the locks. Swap the gem." Lady Evelyn St. Clair, her hands clasped tightly, looked paler than ever. "This is dreadful. I checked my key this morning. It was still in my reticule. How could this happen?" Victor Lyle, lounging with a fresh cigarette, exhaled a lazy plume. "Quite the trick, eh? Maybe our host's pulling the strings, Poirot. Ever think of that?" Poirot poured his coffee, his movements deliberate. "Mise Amos, panic is the thief's. Ally, the sapphire, is gone. But Hercule Poirot does not despair. He observes. He deduces." His gaze lingered on Victor's cigarette case, its serpentine engraving glinting, then shifted to Clara's ink-stained fingers, Evelyn's trembling lips, Hargreaves' twitching eyelid. The butler appeared, his gaunt face betraying no surprise. At the news, "The master is aware of the theft," he intoned. "You are to gather in the drawing-room at noon. Monsieur Poirot, the master trusts you will resolve this." The guests erupted in accusations. Hargreaves pointed at Victor. "You're too damned calm, Lyle. That jester act last night, were you sneaking off to the library?" Victor laughed, flicking ash. "Me? I was dancing, Colonel. Ask the ladies. You're the one with the soldiers. Knack for breaking and entering." Clara smirked. "He's got a point. You've got that limp, but you're quick when you want to be." Evelyn's voice was sharp. "Enough. This bickering helps no one. Monsieur Poirot, what do we do?" Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "We return to the scene. The library holds the truth, and Hercule Poirot will find it." He led the group back, his steps measured, his eyes scanning for overlooked details. In the library, Poirot examined the case again. The locks were unforced, suggesting the thief had used the Caissor replicas. The scuff on the windowsill was faint but fresh, a shallow groove in the wood. He opened the window, peering out. The garden below showed no footprints, but a rose trellis clung to the wall, its thorns sharp and undisturbed. An outside accomplice, perhaps. He turned to the phonograph, its brass horn gleaming. A faint scratch on its base caught his eye, crescent shape, like the dining table's mark and the study's portrait pendant. Interesant, he murmured, filing the detail away. He faced the guests, who hovered near the door, their faces a mix of fear and defiance. The thief is clever, but not invisible. Tell me, who left the ballroom last night after my revelation of the note? Silence fell, heavy as the storm. Clouds outside. Clara spoke first, her voice defiant. I went to my room, alone. You saw the note wasn't mine. Hargreaves cleared his throat. I stayed till the end, then retired. My key was secure. Evelyn nodded. I left early after. The phonograph, I felt ill. Victor grinned. I lingered, enjoying the champagne. You didn't suspect me then, Poirot? Poirot's eyes narrowed. I suspect everyone, Monsieur Lyle, until the truth is clear. He dismissed them, requesting privacy to think. Alone, he paced the library, reconstructing the night. The note was a decoy, meant to keep him dancing while the thief moved. But how had they accessed the case? 5 keys, 5 locks, no signs of tampering. He recalled the scuff, the trellis, the crescent mark. The window was a likely entry, but the locks required keys. Had someone duplicated them? Or was there another way? He examined the case's base, finding a hairline seam a false bottom, perhaps. With a letter opener, he pried it open, revealing a compartment, empty but lined with velvet. A hiding place, but not for the sapphire. Frustrated but undeterred, Poirot summoned the guests to the drawing room at noon, as instructed. The butler stood by, silent as a statue. Poirot faced the group, his voice steady. The sapphire is gone, but the criminal is here. I propose a test. Each of you, place your key on this table. Let us see who hesitates. Hargreaves complied first, slamming his iron key down. There, I've nothing to hide. Clara followed, her bronze key clinking softly. Satisfied Poirot. Evelyn hesitated, then placed her gold key, her hand trembling. I swear I didn't touch it. Victor tossed his copper key with a flourish. Your move, detective. Poirot's silver key joined the others, his eyes watching their faces. Hargreaves' eyelid twitched again, a tick under pressure. Poirot stepped forward, his voice sharp. Colonel, you know locks, Nan. A soldier's skill picking them, perhaps. Hargreaves sputtered. How dare you? I'm no thief. But Poirot pressed on, his tone relentless. Last night, you argued with Monsieur Lyle. You said, I'm not your pawn. Explain. The colonel's face reddened. He tried to bribe me, said he'd pay to borrow my key. I refused. Victor laughed. A lie, Colonel. You're sweating like a guilty man. Poirot turned to Victor, holding up the note from the ball. And you, monsieur, passed this to distract me. But the sapphire was taken after midnight. Where were you? Victor's grin faltered. In my room, sleeping off the champagne. Poirot paced, his mind racing. The crescent marks, the scuff, The empty compartment all pointed to a plan executed with precision. He stopped, facing the group. The thief used the window, but needed a key. Colonel, your skills and your fear betray you. You aided the theft, did you not? Hargreaves collapsed into a chair, his voice hoarse. I didn't steal it. Lyle forced me, threatened to expose an old debt. I only unlocked my lock, nothing more. Poirot's eyes shifted to Victor, who shrugged, unrepentant. Prove it, Poirot. You've got nothing. But Poirot was not finished. He requested the butler search the guests' rooms. Minutes later, the butler returned, holding a velvet pouch. Inside was the Star of Ravenwood, its blue fire unmistakable. It had been hidden in Victor's luggage, tucked inside a hollowed-out book. Monsieur Lyle, Poirot said, his voice like steel, your sleight of hand is clever, but not clever enough. You used the Colonel, the note, the window wall to outwit me. But Hercule Poirot is not so easily fooled. Victor's grin vanished as the butler summoned constables, who had been waiting discreetly outside the manor. As they led him away, Victor muttered, You're good, Poirot. But you haven't caught M. The guests dispersed, shaken but relieved. Poirot stood by the fireplace. The sapphire returned to its case, his mind on the elusive M. The theft was solved, the criminal caught, but the mastermind remained a shadow. He sipped his tisane, satisfied with the day's victory, yet certain the game was not yet over. Chapter 6. The mind behind the mask, the storm that had threatened Ravenwood. Manor all weekend finally broke as Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing-room, the recovered Star of Ravenwood glinting in its library case once more. Rain lashed the tall windows, and thunder rumbled like a distant warning, but Poirot's demeanor remained serene. Victor Lyle, the gambler with the serpent-engraved cigarette case, had been led away in handcuffs, his role as the thief exposed. Yet the shadow of M, the unseen host who had orchestrated this weekend of deception, lingered like the storm's echo. Poirot's little grey cells were not at rest. The game, he sensed, had one final move. The remaining guests, Colonel Hargreaves, Clara Wren, and Lady Evelyn St. Clair, gathered in the drawing-room, their faces a mix of relief and unease. The butler, ever silent, stood by the door, his gaunt features unreadable. The Sapphire's recovery had lifted the weight of suspicion, but the absence of their host gnawed at them. Poirot, in his immaculate suit, paced before the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back, his green eyes sharp beneath his polished brow. Mise, Amos, he began, his voice cutting through the patter of rain. The Star of Ravenwood is safe, and Monsieur Lyle is in custody. But the mind behind this game, the one who calls themselves M, remains hidden. Hercule Poirot does not leave a puzzle half solved. Hargreaves, his military bearing softened by exhaustion, leaned forward in his chair. Lyle was the thief, Poirot. Isn't that enough? Let's leave this cursed place and be done with it. Clara, her notebook closed for once, shook her head. Not yet, Colonel. There's a bigger story here. Who's M? Why this elaborate charade? Evelyn, her silver shawl drawn tight, spoke softly. I just want to go home. This weekend has been overwhelming. Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. Nan, we do not depart until the truth is complete. The crescent marks and the dining table, the phonograph, the portrait point to a mind that plans with precision. Victor was a tool, but not the architect. The architect is here among us. The room stilled, the only sound the rain's relentless drum. Hargreaves' eyelid twitched. Clara's fingers tightened on her pen, and Evelyn's gaze dropped to her lap. The butler remained impassive, but Poirot noted a faint shift in his stance, as if bracing for what was to come. Poirot turned to the group, his voice steady but piercing. "Let us reconstruct. The invitation, the phonograph, the keys, the maze. The masqueradal, designed to test me, to challenge Hercule Poirot. But why? Not for the sapphire alone, Nan. It was a game of intellect, a duel of minds. And who among you has the cunning to devise such a plan?" Hargreaves bristled. "You're not accusing me again, are you? I told you, Lyle coerced me." Clara smirked, her eyes glinting. "Maybe it's me, Poirot. A journalist could stage a drama like this for the headlines." Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. "This is absurd. I've done nothing but try to survive this ordeal." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile beneath it. "Madame St. Clair, you speak of survival, yet your actions betray a deeper role. Your fainting spell during the tour convenient, Nan. It drew attention while I found the study's hidden panel. Your disappearance in the maze timed perfectly before the riddle's discovery. And last night, you left the ball early, claiming illness, yet your step was sure when you thought no one watched." Evelyn's face paled, her hands clutching her shawl. "What are you implying, Monsieur Poirot? I'm no criminal." "Nan, not a criminal," Poirot said, stepping closer. "But the mastermind, you are the architect of this game. Lady Evelyn St. Clair, retired detective, once renowned for her cases in Paris under the name Marguerite Duval." A gasp rippled through the room. Hargreaves' jaw dropped, Clara's pen fell, and Evelyn's eyes widened, then softened into a resigned smile. The butler, for the first time, showed a flicker of surprise, his fixed smile faltering. "Brava, Monsieur Poirot," Evelyn said, her voice steady now, shedding its fragility. "I wondered how long it would take you." She rose, her silver shawl falling to reveal a posture of quiet authority. "Yes, I am Marguerite Duval, though I left that life behind. This weekend was my designer test, not of theft, but of intellect." Clara leaned forward, her journalist's instinct flaring. "A test? You mean this was all a set-up? Why, Evelyn?" Poirot's gaze, her eyes bright with respect. "I read of your cases, Monsieur Poirot, and admired your methods. When I retired, I grew restless. Ravenwood, my family's estate, became my canvas. I devised this game to see if the great Hercule Poirot could match a mind like mine, not to steal, but to challenge." Hargreaves sputtered. "You mean the sapphire was never in danger? This was all a bloody farce." "Not a farce," Marguerite said. "A puzzle. Victor was my pawn, hired to play the thief. The sapphire was removed and returned by my staff. Your butler, Monsieur Poirot, is more than he seems. I wanted to see how you'd unravel it." Poirot's smile widened. "And I did, madame. The crescent marks your signature, a nod to your past cases, where you left such symbols to taunt the police. The panel, the tripwire, the note, all your design to test my observation." She nodded, a spark of delight in her eyes. "You noticed the marks? Few would. And you caught Victor, though I confess I didn't expect you to find the sapphire so swiftly." Clara scribbled furiously now, her excitement palpable. "This is incredible. A retired detective staging a mystery to duel Poirot. I need an exclusive. Lady Evelyn Marguerite, whatever your name is." Marguerite laughed, a sound like clear bells. "Write your story, Miss Wren, but leave my past out of it. I value my privacy." Hargreaves stood, his face a mix of indignation and relief. "Well, I'll be damned. You've got nerve, ma'am. But I'm glad it's over." Poirot bowed slightly to Marguerite. "Madame, your game was masterful, but Hercule Poirot is not so easily outwitted. I trust you will not take offence if I claim victory." She returned a bow, her smile genuine. "None at all, monsieur. You've earned it. The sapphire is yours to keep, if you wish a token of my respect." Poirot shook his head, his hand resting on his heart. "Nan, the truth is my reward, and the pleasure of meeting a mind so brilliant." The butler stepped forward, his role as Marguerite's confidant now clear. "The car awaits to take you all to the station," he said, his voice softer now. "The master, madame, thanks you for your participation." As the guests packed, Marguerite approached Poirot privately, her expression earnest. "Forgive the deception, monsieur. I meant no harm, only to honor your genius." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Madame, a game well played is its own absolution. But next time, perhaps a simpler challenge, Nan. My little grey cells need no such theatrics to shine." She laughed, and they parted with a mutual nod of respect. The rain had eased as boarded the Rolls-Royce, the manor fading into the mist behind him. He sipped his Tizen, brought from his room, and gazed at the countryside rolling past. The crescent marks, the sapphire, the mask saw, had been pieces of Marguerite's grand puzzle, now solved. Victor was a thief, but a hired one. The colonel, a coerced pawn. Clara, an observer caught in the web. And Marguerite, the elusive M, had met her match. As the car neared the station, Poirot leaned back, his mind at ease. "Mon cher Ravenwood," he murmured, "you have tested me, but Hercule Poirot triumphs always." The sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden light, and he smiled, content with the case well closed, ready for the next mystery to call.